Here is a fact that should bother you more than it does. Every major empire in recorded history followed roughly the same financial arc. Not similar. The same, the Romans, the Spanish, the Dutch, the British. Same arc, different centuries, different languages, different uniforms. And when historians mapped it out, they found something uncomfortable. The collapse does not happen all at once. It happens in stages, 5 of them. And the terrifying part is not the final stage. The terrifying part is that by the time most people recognize it, they are already in stage 3 or 4. Today we walk through all 5. We get precise about what each one looks like, what it feels like from the inside. And then we do something most people avoid in polite company. We look at Europe objectively and figure out exactly where it sits on that map. Not to be dramatic, because if you understand the pattern, you stop being surprised by the events. Stage 1. The productivity miracle. Every dominant economic bloc starts here. You are producing more than you consume. You have surpluses. You are building things, roads, factories, rules of law that other people want to copy. The thing that made you powerful is actually firing. Europe had this. For roughly 200 years, from the mid-1700s to the mid-1900s, European nations were the engine of the world. They industrialized first. They exported capital, goods, and governance models globally. It was often brutal, but economically, the machine was running. That is stage 1. Stage 2. The financialization creep. And this is subtle. This is the stage nobody notices until they look backwards. After enough years of real productivity, real wealth accumulation, the economy tilts. Instead of making money by building things, the elites discover you can make money by moving money. Banks grow faster than factories. Credit expands. Property values detach from wages. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the economy stops rewarding people who produce and starts rewarding people who own. Britain did this in the late 1800s. Its manufacturing peaked around 1870. But London, as a financial center, kept growing for another 50 years. It looked like prosperity. Meanwhile, Germany and America were outproducing them on every metric that actually mattered. In Europe today, finance, real estate, and insurance account for a larger share of GDP in many member states than manufacturing does. The EU financial sector manages assets worth roughly 3 times the combined GDP of all member states. Stage 2 does not feel like decline. That is the trap. Stage 3. The debt dependency loop. This is where the math turns. When real productivity growth slows, governments face a choice. Tell citizens the era of abundance is transitioning and manage expectations, which is politically suicidal. Or borrow, print, defer, keep the lights on with credit and hope growth eventually catches up. Almost every government in history has chosen option 2, because option 1 loses elections. Debt grows, and at first, fine. Debt for a railroad that generates 50 years of economic activity is different from debt that pays a pension generating 0 new output. One is an investment, the other is a liability in disguise. European sovereign debt is not a future problem, it is a present one. Greece, Italy, France, Belgium, Spain all carry public debt above 90% of GDP. Italy sits above 130%. France crossed 100% in 2020 and has not looked back. The EU's own fiscal rules say no country should exceed 60%. Those rules have been suspended so many times they function more as suggestions than rules. And here is what rarely gets said out loud. The ECB has been the quiet buyer of last resort for European sovereign debt for over a decade. Between 2015 and 2022, it purchased approximately 5 trillion euros in bonds. That is not monetary policy. That is a central bank propping up the fiscal decisions of member governments. When the ECB raised rates aggressively in 2022 and 2023, the cost of that debt became very real, very fast. Italy's interest payments on its national debt are now larger than its entire defense budget. The cost of past decisions is crowding out the ability to make new ones. This is Stage 3. Europe is clearly inside it. Stage 4. Institutional erosion. Slower and quieter than the others. Possibly the most dangerous. Trust erodes, not all at once, through 1,000 small compromises, through rules that do not apply equally, through a growing gap between what leaders say and what the numbers show. The European project was built on a promise. Integration would produce stability, growth, and shared prosperity. And for a while, it delivered. Then it did not. Greece could not devalue its currency in 2010. It could only impose austerity. Spain watched unemployment hit 27%. The design of the system failed the people it was sold to. Add to this the rise of anti-establishment parties across the continent. They are not fringe anymore. They are in government in Italy. They are the official opposition in France. They are polling in the 30s in Germany. You can disagree with their positions, but their growth is a signal. When people stop believing existing institutions can solve their problems, they reach for alternatives. History is clear on what comes next when that process accelerates. Stage 4 is where the social contract starts to fray, and that fraying has momentum. Before Stage 5, one important thing. This is not a prediction, it is a pattern. Patterns are not destiny. Japan has navigated enormous debt and demographic decline for 30 years without collapsing. The United States has structural problems that would terrify any honest economist and remains the world's reserve currency. Stage 5 is not inevitable, but it does not arrive with a warning. Stage 5 is the sudden stop. Some external event or the slow accumulation of internal pressure triggers a loss of confidence that becomes self-fulfilling. Investors stop buying the debt. The currency comes under pressure. Growth collapses, the social contract breaks, and the political response historically is almost always nationalism, scapegoating, and authoritarian consolidation. Because that is what humans reach for when they are frightened and the institutions they trusted have failed them. We are not describing Europe today. We are describing what to watch for. So where exactly is Europe? Firmly in Stage 3. Dipping into Stage 4 in several key member states. That is the honest answer. European labor productivity growth has averaged under 1% annually for the last decade. The United States has outgrown Europe in almost every year since 2008. The Draghi report, commissioned by the EU itself in 2024, said Europe needs 800 billion euros annually just to remain competitive. And it does not have a clear mechanism for generating that without new debt, new taxes, or transfers that richer member states will resist. Underneath all of this sits a demographic problem like a slow leak in a ship. The working-age population is shrinking. Pension obligations are growing. Energy costs after the rupture with Russian gas remain structurally higher than main competitors. That is a compounding disadvantage in any industry requiring energy to function, which is most industries. None of this means Europe is finished. It has deep capital markets, skilled workforces, and remarkable institutions. These things provide real runway. But here's the question nobody in Brussels tends to answer directly. When your growth is slow, your debt is high, your institutions are under stress, your demographics are declining, and your competitive position is eroding, what exactly is the plan? Not the summit communique plan. The actual mechanism by which this trajectory reverses. Because historically, economies in Stage 3 and 4 have one of two outcomes. They find a genuine structural reform that resets the cycle, or they drift toward Stage 5 waiting for someone else to act first. The hardest part of this story is not the economics. The hardest part is that most people living through Stages 3 and 4 do not feel like they are in a collapsing system. They feel like they are in a frustrating one, Prices are high, growth is slow, politicians are uninspiring, but the schools are still open, the hospitals are still running. That normalcy is real. And it is also exactly what it felt like in late-stage Habsburg Vienna, in 1920s Britain. In every civilization that looked in the mirror and saw something still functional, still holding together, even as the underlying arithmetic quietly made its case. The ECB buying $5 trillion in bonds bought time. The pandemic spending bought time. Time is not nothing, but time is not a solution. So the question to sit with is this. If you were looking at this from the outside, without the citizenship, without the nostalgia, and someone handed you the data and asked honestly where you thought this was going, what would you say? That is the question Europe's own institutions are struggling to answer without flinching. And whether or not they find the answer in time is one of the most consequential economic questions of the next 20 years.